Hello, this is Farrell Vincent, and I wanted to talk about another meta team for Arena, which is the one I have on screen. And specifically, we're going to be going into anti-air. This is the most common team that will be faced tomorrow, although I will talk about some alternatives and some keynotes for anyone watching. Now, this team specifically is 1000% reliant on two things, which is going to be Ingrid and Praetus. Praetus carries the first two phases, and then Ingrid pretty much carries after that. And Praetus's only real job beyond that point is to make Ingrid better, and also to help with the sixth wave specifically, as he does decent damage to those little flying Swazos. I'm going to say Swazo because I like Monster Hunter, or whatever that was, Monster Rancher. Most people are using Ajax. He does do the the magic shred on people who get close to him, which makes Ingrid better. He also has an RNG chance for a slow. I have seen people using Pelagius and a bunch of other combinations, but generally speaking, this seems to be the best. And I'll make a shout out to a few variations, as I've done in the previous videos. So, oh gosh. Why have I forgotten her name? It's not Dahlia. Dahlin. So Dahlin, her whole thing, she doesn't even need gear, right? I actually don't have this Dahlin geared at all, because that is not a requirement. Her whole job is to stand there and provide her passive skill every 25 seconds. She doesn't need rage, she doesn't need rage regen. It's not going to help her, don't bother with it. You could technically build her with your Cyrene build from previous sections if you wanted to. There is a benefit to doing that in the sense that it allows you to get Soulbound Arcana stacked up faster on your Praetus. Why not? But basically, you want to have your Praetus get 1 to 2 hits. Arguably, that lightning needs to be a little bit sooner, but I was talking. But you get the idea, right? The whole goal is you use your Praetus Lightning, and then at this point you can just kill the secondary monster. Oh, that's because of my timings. So we'll do this better with timings. So Praetus is going to get his initial hits out. You want to click on your Judgment Bolt before he hits the 2 stacks. If you do it as soon as you drop him, you will have the benefit of being able to get that initial damage on the first hit, which will ultimately help towards killing the first spawning creature. Like that. So from there, Praetus can then one-shot each of those creatures, and it makes it go a little bit faster. At this point, the whole goal is to get to 2 stacks of your Judgment Bolt, and that will instantly kill the second flyer on the second wave. You will need to ult with Praetus, and then cast as soon as you think it's going to die, because you need most of the bolts to hit that one target. From here, you drop your Ingrid, you drop your Dolores. I use Dolores because I don't have Constance. If you have Constance, it's worth mentioning that Constance is the best in slot for that particular role, only because her BP is higher. So on defensive value, she actually does perform better. But on offensive battles, you don't need to worry about your BP. So I tend to bring Dolores. I also don't have Constance, so cheers. And then from here, it's all about hitting the Judgment Bolt before Ingrid casts her big attack. I don't even know what it's called. It's just the thing that deletes everything on the screen. She does it every 5 hits. I generally like to click this on 3 to 4, depending on wave. Also, if I'm recording content, apparently I like to click it as I'm literally casting the ability that I'm worried about it hitting. I like to use Dolores on 5, because then she will most likely be up for 6. I also don't bother putting Ajax in Dolores range. You can put him here. The only thing that I don't like about this position is he's not able to help with the damage on these last 2 waves as quickly. And so this is a more advantageous position for the end when you're on the last 2 waves, whereas this is more advantageous for these 2 waves. So it depends on what your preference is. You know, I like to get that magic res up a little sooner, and I also like to have him dealing damage a bit sooner as well. On wave 6, that is going to be Praetus Ultimate plus Judgment Bolt. And then wave 7 or wave 8 is when you want to use your Ajax Ultimate. I like to do it on wave 7 specifically so that I can save Judgment for the last wave. This way I can guarantee, even with high BP targets, that I have killed everything and can then use a 2-stack as Dolores comes right back up. So, Dolores, and then we're going to cast, and everything on the screen dies. It's that simple, right? This is why people are using the Ingrid composition, because she literally is the delete button. Everything dies. There's some pros and cons to this, though. Ingrid requires a bit of a ramp up that most people don't. Like, there are ways to beat that ramp up, right? There are some variations of the Ingrid strategy as well that I have seen that seem to work relatively okay. And again, I'm playing with all of this, so you'll see random hero. I was using Pelagius for a bit instead of Dolores. It's not as good. I don't recommend it. So the thing that I have played with too is giving Dahlen a random invigoration set. I literally don't even bother giving her any other gear. I'm just putting her in invigoration pieces, that I know that I'm not going to use very often, if at all. So what I generally do is there is also a way to have an early drop of a ranged unit, like a Sargok, right? I'm going to quick equip for the purpose of the video. This is a pretty bad build. Like, you wouldn't want to give him an attack speed amulet. That seems dumb. You know, stuff like that. Like, this is better already. Little things like that. Like, quick equip makes me angry. But you can use like a Sargok, a Silas. I've really, really, really wanted to try it where, well, I'll show you that combination. But basically, I was trying something with Lucius. I still can't get it to work the way I want it to, but I will show you guys. It's just because Lucius is so weird. So in this particular variant, it's all about getting to 12 cost, right? Dahlen is not the first unit dropped. And then what you want to do is drop in the first tile. This is the least used tile, right? The benefit of this particular strategy is it really doesn't cut down too much on time. The other thing is you can ult early, especially with like a Sargok, right? Because he just hits so fast, it's insane. So you might as well just get him low on hit points. He's never going to get healed, so who cares, right? And then you can, of course, if you want, still do the Judgment Bolt, but it does not one-shot if Praetus has not been deployed yet. So keep that in mind. I'm using Dahlen to give her Invigoration to Sargok. And then placing Dahlen second allows for the, general cost stacking. You'll still be able to get Ingrid out on wave 3. It just takes a little bit longer, but it's not too bad. And you'll notice that, like, you don't really lose out on a lot of time here, but the only thing is your Praetus isn't up, so your Judgment Lightning does not deal nearly as much damage because he has not been deployed to get his Tear of Twilight buff that allows him to deal more damage. And then from here, it's kind of stock standard, except you now have this lovely Sargok just wailing away on people, causing a ton of disruption. Kind of what he's really good at, right? I do like to drop Praetus as my third drop of actual DPS, just because, again, I want to try to get the lightning doing some actual damage. It's also why I don't click on the initial sort of damage buff there, is because I can use a 2-stack on this wave, and it will generally clear it out. I probably didn't have my timings down. I wasn't counting between waves, so that was a mistake, but we're going to roll with it because it sounds fun. You want him facing this way. But yeah, so this is the kind of strategy that you can run. Again, you could technically not bother with Ajax and do Dolores. He's kind of irrelevant in these setups now. And the main reason he's irrelevant is just because, like, you're not going to really need to do much. And now that I'm at 3 stacks of this, because of course I missed it, we're going to time 1, 3, 4, and now that we're at 5 hits, everything on the screen is dead. That is what Ingrid does. I'm just going to cast this right away because I'm hoping something actually walks into it. That facing. I feel like it's a good memeable moment. It's fine. Yeah, you can see why I'm like, I'm not a fan of missing it. No! But I like Sargok in general. He's just good. I mean, even without a Lord, he does pretty decent. The same thing for Silas. Silas will delete the first 2 waves with little to no issue. Ult timings matter. Now, the biggest issue that you can kind of see with these setups, though, comes down to Praetus. Praetus requires a little bit of timing. So that Praetus ultimate needs to hit at a time that is advantageous to your Ingrid receiving it. So my big issue with Praetus in that comp is that it does make that a little difficult. You can substitute in Ingrid as an actual Lord. And again, I kind of tried this strategy with Lucius. Lucius, at least my Lucius, is not hitting as hard as he could, right? Now, I could play around with the gear a little bit and try to min-max it. We'll see how this goes just by making those 2 quick changes. At this point, right, obviously Praetus is no longer needed. He's a good unit, but you don't really need him, right? He's not there to make the composition better. And then Constance is still great because she's technically a Watchguard unit, and so you can have 5 Watchguards, which will allow Ingrid's Lord skill to come up more often, which is always a benefit. So I feel like an all Watchguard team should work better in theory. I've just not been able to get it done in practice. I feel like putting Lucius over 1 does help him to deal a little bit more damage. My main problem with Lucius is that he doesn't seem to do as good of damage on the second wave as I want him to. And then again, after that, he's kind of irrelevant. It doesn't really matter what he is doing. Once you get your Ingrid out and you're in your AoE waves, it really doesn't matter all that much. But like as you can see here, this guy is going to live a lot longer because Lucius is not as strong of a DPS as a Silas or a Sargok, unless he's in his demon mode, which so far he has not triggered his demon mode passive. So there's that. You can click his ultimate, especially because like I have him A3. I could click his ultimate and he'll do a little bit more damage, but like it's not great, right? It's not something that's going to break the bank, that's for sure. But you can kind of see where, making these decisions does matter a bit. The nice thing about it, though, is that you no longer have a button to click. So you just let Ingrid do Ingrid stuff, and she will one-shot waves on her own now, too, right? She doesn't need Praetus to help her one-shot a wave. She just deals big damage all the time. So I like it from that perspective. It's just that those two waves where it kind of feels a little awkward to me still. And I really want him to go demon mode, but maybe I just need to suck it up and accept that the ultimate is the ultimate, and that's that. Hard to say. But I really do like the Ingrid part of the strategy better because, well, now she just does crazy high damage because she feels like it, not because you need a setup. I'm actually kind of surprised I don't see more people running with this. I do think that with good skill ups on Lucius, it's not a bad idea. And honestly, especially if you have him like A3 where you can get some of these stuns off, it may not be a bad idea just in general to use him. The only thing is again, you can tell it's really not as strong in Wave 6 and the single target waves in general. The other thing with this strategy, I highly recommend you save your Iax ult for Wave 8. Because you want to get the little fish down as fast as possible because sometimes those little friggin' Suezo dudes can get through. So there's that. So getting people to lock on to the floating, eyeball guys as fast as possible is the advantageous choice on this one. Because you do not want anything getting past on this composition. You don't have Praetus' ultimate to act as a failsafe, basically. So that's another variant of this. I'm actually going to be trying this composition in this week's anti-air. So this is the composition I'm rolling with. Whether or not it works good or not, we will find out. I am a little nervous about it. I will be putting better gear on these heroes because right now it's currently being locked up by my single target teams, but you get the idea. Other variations you can make, especially if you're going with a full watchguard team, Alistair does help with the single target issue where you are missing some. So if you do not have like an Iax, Alistair's not a bad idea. And Dolan, of course, has been replaced with Cyrene. Cyrene is both better and worse than Dolan at the job. The reason I say better and worse is because Cyrene's first ultimate goes off slightly before Dolan's initial cost generation. However, at the second cost generation for Cyrene, where again it's going to be slightly before, you're going to then be at a net loss because her cost generation is higher. So you are getting more cost out of this one, and the duration between them is not that long. The only reason why that first ultimate is really a large part ahead is because Cyrene has initial rage, and so that initial rage on Cyrene will allow her to do her first ultimate, but then all the subsequent ones, you are literally waiting for the full 680 tick, right? And you're looking at a 15 passive with gear in order to be able to get to that 680. And so it takes some time. Just something to think about, right? You're getting less for about the same amount of time in between from that point on. So Cyrene's really only good for like first round strategies, whereas I think Dolan is better for the long game. Especially if you can get your Ingrid out by wave 3, no matter which compositions you're going with, you're generally going to be in a good spot. So knowing which unit you're placing first kind of tells you what you're doing. And both will allow you to do it, although Cyrene, you'll get like the second or the third wave will have started and already be moving by the time you get your Ingrid out, whereas with Dolan, especially if you're dropping her first and doing the Praetor strategy, you will be able to do that before that wave fully sets in. So considerations to make. There are other strategies, of course, that do work that aren't even Ingrid related. Arguably, the best involves my boy Sargok, Silas. I'm going to go this way, so just so I don't have to keep clicking on the Piercer Lord. But yes, Sargok, Silas, your choice, preferably Eovar, of Piercer Lord. I have Araka, sorry. So this is who I have, so that's who I'm going to use. And then, it's kind of your choice from there on how to do things. But for the most part, when it comes to these strategies, because your units, your initial units are so low cost, most people are not bothering with any kind of, sorry, didn't mean to add her. Most people aren't bothering with cost generators, right? I like Nyx for this. I also think that you can use Pelagius. Pelagius is weird. I will describe that here in a second, but really, Pelagius can sometimes be even more advantageous than Ingrid, depending on circumstances and how lucky you think you're going to get. Which really just describes all of what I was about to say, but whatever. So with this particular strategy, I do personally like to use Dolores, just because, again, having Nyx clear out those last two waves quickly means you really do want the inspiration buff. And so this is like the OG, right? This is the stock standard, what everyone was doing for the longest of times. You can place here or here. Here is slightly slower, although with everyone running Ingrid strategies, it's a much better placement than it used to be. Here is okay as well if you're using a Sargok. If you wanted to use Silas, the best spot is right here, only because you now have Silas in range, and he has the wrong artifact, but whatever. He is now in range of Dolores. Sargok, you do not want to heal at all, whereas with a Silas, it doesn't really matter. And again, you're not really fighting for time on these waves anymore, right? If you're running a Piercer strategy, you're going to be fighting against Ingrid all the time. The other thing, though, that I don't like about this is it is really awkward on this initial set of waves because, you really don't want to click Silas's ultimate until wave 3. Just because you need so much cost to get out some of these AoE piercing damage units that it makes it really kind of like a waiting game. And I'm not 100% sure I'm even going to kill this guy in time, which is interesting. That's what I get for quick equip gear. That's embarrassing. So we'll use Sargok because I know it'll work. But yeah, you get the idea. You kind of have to play the waiting game a lot with this. So kind of the pros to the piercing strategies is I noticed the BP is higher. Also, Nyx with Awakenings, specifically her A3 and her exclusive artifact, do a crazy amount of damage with a decent amount of penetration that is added in from that exclusive. And so it kind of makes her into like a machine gun DPS, where she will literally just instantly delete every wave after a while. So if you have an A3 Nyx and her exclusive artifact, and you have a Silas who has his bonded skill and his exclusive artifact too, would be beneficial, if not required. He's going to be getting killed, so you don't have to worry about him. Then, I definitely would not be upset at somebody for using this strategy, right? That wouldn't be a bad idea because you have all of the components you need to make it work really well. Also, there's this awkward moment right here where you're like, come on, please don't fail me now. We'll probably make it. But you kind of get the idea, right? There's some issues with this strategy that you can already see, right? I've got a flyer through, and again, Having appropriate gear would probably fix that better than what I'm doing, but you kind of get the idea. I am going to do something you shouldn't do because of the interest of time in making a video. I don't really want to bother with re-gearing and getting everyone in the appropriate stuff for this to work. I'm going to be lazy, so forgive me. You're going to want to ult with Silas and or Sargok on every other wave. So what you're basically going to want to do is alternate these two. If you're ulting with Sargok, you do not want to ult with Silas, because having them up at various times makes this even more efficient for you. Same thing for Nyx. Nyx, if you have her A3, you can ult just once on the Suezo wave, and it will kind of instantly delete them. And then it'll be up through the rest of the fight for like 99% of all people. Whereas if you notice here, it's going to go down because I do not have her A3. And I hope that I will get her back up. But this is the next wave. So, again, Silas would be on 6. I tend to like to put Araka back here just because she does do stuns sometimes, and every so often you can get her to stun inside of your range of your Silas, which would be up to here, so you kind of base it on that. Since my Silas is way back here, doing nothing, you just ignore this bit. These guys would already be dead by now. I'm not going to get 3 ults off with her. I don't know why I bothered clicking that, but you get the idea. And you can see here that my Nyx does not have enough rage regen, so this is going to get even more awkward as time goes on, but it's okay. But this is why I think this strategy started to fall out of favor. These strategies were just the most common, but they didn't always kill all of the waves, right? It was a thing where you would have to put DPS in waiting, or you'd have to figure out your own way of kind of doing some of these strategies to where they would, people would have to be pulled off and then put back on. And, there was a lot of awkwardness. That's why Ingrid became such a menace when she did, is because not only do you have failsafe in Praetus, which is the more common thing to run into, but Ingrid also deletes everything on screen every time she casts her 5th shot, basically. Nobody copy this because you'll be dead by now. But just to show you the last wave and how that generally works, is you then just pop, 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 and then Nyx does Nyx things and everything on the screen generally just dies. Gear's bad. I can already tell. I'm not hitting for 110k like I should be. Things like that. You can see the pros and cons for this already. Faster first 2 rounds, but there are ways to circumvent that even with the meta strategy. I would say the big thing is the meta is Ingrid, right? Ingrid is the meta. It doesn't matter how you use her. It more matters, whether or not things get past her. So as long as you can keep everything in front of her, doing a full watchguard style like this should, in theory, be great, right? And I'm going to play around with it more today, make sure that I get it to where I'm happy with it, and then we will test it. You could easily substitute out Ajax for Ymrit. The benefit of Ymrit over Ajax, it really is that he has a 25% slow on all enemies around him, and he does have some decent CC, so you can use him both for damage and for CC, and he is a little bit less cost than Ajax is. You do not get the magic shred, but sometimes keeping things in Ingrid range is just better, right? You don't want things to get past you. He's going to do a better job of that than Ajax does. Ajax, when RNG blesses him, Not that skill. When RNG blesses him, does have a 25% slow that is 5 seconds. So it's the same slow, but one hero guarantees that the other one doesn't. So it's up to you what you would prefer. I don't know what I'm going to prefer yet, so cheers. I'm leaning towards Yimrit looking at all this right now, but we'll see. I don't have his skills maxed out, but I can soon. I don't know. Something to think about. But that is, in a nutshell, everything you really do need to know about the current anti-air meta. In terms of if you're using heroes, like honestly, you just use your best gear. Ingrid, the only thing that I will say, because everyone else, I don't care what you're using, with Ingrid, Infernal Roar is the best because you never click her ultimate, and because it requires no ramp up. And you guys kind of saw it already. This is like my D'est of D tier gear that I've put her in, and she can still one-shot a wave. I usually can get her up to 98k BP, so she's 10,000 down from where I'm normally at. And she can still one-shot every wave with relative ease. So Ingrid is just a monster. Yeah, just a monster. And if you don't have her, I'm sorry. I hope you have, the WoR strategy that, exists. Because, I'm going to get my teeth kicked in by this guy, right? And you can see that meta team right there. I'm going to get my teeth kicked in by this guy, right? I'm going to get my teeth kicked in by this guy. And I'm just, the more I go down, the more you're going to see. It takes a bit before I get to the first one. And guess what? There's that A5 Nyx with a maxed out Scarlet dagger. So, of course, they're going to use Nyx because increases AoE damage and gains 20% penetration during the ultimate. And when they're awakened, they get that ultimate up even more. So this Nyx is going to delete waves tomorrow. I guarantee this Nyx is going to delete waves. And I mean, you can see this individual's using, Hotsit. Hotsit's great for all of the AoE. We've got our Silas, who most likely has his bonded skill, because with that, he is a much better hero. Without his bonded skill, he's kind of mid. With his bonded skill, he's better than pretty much anyone else. So, decisions to make, everyone. But with that, I will appreciate your patronage. Thank you for getting this far in the video. Consider leaving a comment and, like and subscribe to these videos. That way more of my Watcher of Realms content can be put to the front. And I will see you on the next one.